think the microphone's working. That's a good sign.
Always helpful.
All right. Last thing. Record. Welcome into another edition of Steak, Bourbon, and Sports. This is the show in which we eat steak, drink bourbon, and talk about sports. Sometimes a little bit
as long as one of us isn't having a wedding anniversary, we do those things.
Which is what happened last week when on Tuesday morning, Jeremy was like, I'm not going to do the show. My wife might be upset if I'm drinking bourbon and talking into a camera on our anniversary.
So happened, it was our 8th anniversary and it's not, most people don't know this, but the 8th anniversary is the podcast anniversary. But my wife does not, she's not old fashioned like that. So yeah. I felt like, and later confirmed, that it would have been a really bad idea for me to be recording the podcast here on our anniversary. So it turns out there was no podcast last week, but we're back.
We're back and better than ever. We took a week off to really, just recalibrate, get things right, really plan out the rest of the season.
Well, and the president got COVID. I felt that it was appropriate for all of us to quarantine after that.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Now he's back and better than ever, and so are we.
Can't be too careful. I don't think he's better than ever, though. Have you seen the latest polls?
Well, I mean, you can't ask other people if he's better than ever. You just have to say it. You've learned nothing from the last 4 years already. You just say it.
I have learned that. I've learned that whatever you say is the truth so long as you believe it. If you believe it is true.
That's the George Costanza. Yeah.
It's the world I want to live in.
The George Costanza. It's not a lie if you believe it. I live my life by that.
So does the President of the United States. All right, I am Ari Temkin on Twitter at Ari Sports. You can check me out on SiriusXM channel 375, weekday mornings 7 to 10 a.m. Central, 8 to 11 Eastern, and figure out the time zone if you're somewhere else. Jeremy Mandel, you can find him under a bridge, usually. Most of the time. And
I get Slurpees a lot.
Who have you dragged under the bridge with you today?
Well, it's not dragging under the bridge. In this week's case, I've just found another bridge and brought somebody that was under that bridge and brought him over to this bridge. But this week we have Julian Friedman, a good friend of mine. Julian is a bourbon aficionado. He's done quite a few things recently that I want to talk about, just partly because some of the things are really, really great. Which is the first time I've outwardly complimented Julian in the years that I've known him.
You don't outwardly compliment many people.
That's a hard thing. And then he's also he's done a barrel pick recently, and we'll get into all that. But I wanted
Did you do it from Zoom? You did it on Zoom?
No. Julian went to Four Roses and did a pick. So I want to kind of hear about the in-person barrel selecting in the land of COVID, or in the era of COVID. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Julian also is a big fan of Mike Tomlin. So we'll be doing a lot of complimenting Mike Tomlin on this podcast.
The current head coach of the Dallas Cowboys, who's through 4 games not very good, is from Pittsburgh.
Is that right?
You know that? Yeah. And the Steelers and Cowboys play in a couple weeks.
It only took 4 weeks for us to start calling him the current head coach of the Dallas Cowboys.
Might be former pretty soon here.
Well,
maybe not pretty soon, but it'll be less than 10 years.
I'm thinking hopefully Mike Nolan is renting. I don't think he bought. So
it's almost like he's not the problem, but I digress. We don't have to talk Cowboys off the bat. It might be that the guy who's in charge, who helped to install the schemes that they're now running, he's responsible for it too.
Ari, we've gone over this before. I will not sit here and listen to you besmirch the name of the most decorated general manager in the National Football League.
It's true.
Three Super Bowl titles, multiple Executive of the Year awards. He's not the problem. But anyway, so Julian is here with us tonight. Julian has, as I said, just got done doing a pick at Four Roses. First of all, Julian, welcome. You are welcome.
It's my first podcast, so I don't know when I'm supposed to talk, or I don't really know what I'm supposed to do right now.
Not
Ricky Bobby with my hands up. Are we being
well.
filmed?
We are.
We are. You're not supposed to talk yet, and you've ruined the podcast.
Well, this introduction was fantastic.
So Julian just got done. Julian, can you tell us a little bit about? I'll get into some details with this, but kind of big picture. There's a barrel pick that you guys made that you're real excited about. Can you tell us a little bit about who's making this pick? What was it? What makes it special? All that sort of stuff.
Yeah, for sure. So, and first of all, thanks for having me. Super excited about this first podcast. Not a long time listener, not a long time attender. Super excited. No, but I did listen to a couple, and I'm going to start following it a lot more closely. That'll be my first podcast that I listen to.
Awesome.
Sorry, we got a listener.
We got one. We should have guests every week. This is the real reason to have it, so we just build up our base.
Yeah, just get people on the podcast, and they feel guilty and have to listen to it after that.
I should warn you though. Most people do not like me, so that's important.
That's a fair point. That's a fair point.
That's a great way to start. It's great to meet you. Most people don't like me.
I mean, it's not because of me.
It's because of
the problem is everybody.
Yeah, of course. So, yeah, thanks. We did go to Four Roses. It was really cool because, I'm not affiliated with a liquor store, and I don't have a barrel picking group, but 3 years ago, I went on a pick with a group that I was a part of and had a great time. We ended up talking a lot with Brent Elliott, who's the master distiller over at Four Roses. And I ended up, kind of reaching out to him to see like what could potentially happen and see if he even remembered who I was 3 years later. And he was, such a good dude. He reached out and said, of course I remember you. And I went through the process of chatting with him and, explained to him kind of what I was looking to do. And he put me in touch with the right people. And I ended up making this pick. We went down there with me and some other guys from the Bourbon group who are pretty well known in the whiskey space, especially when it comes to Four Roses. And we ended up asking Brent if he would join us as well. And he did. So both Mandy, for those that know Bourbon and Four Roses, both Mandy and Brent were there. And there was only 4 of us allowed in there.
Wow.
You were not supposed to bring glass in. It's all from plastic. I won't talk about whether or not we found a way around that or not, but technically, you're supposed to drink out of plastic, and it's, 4 people and you're spread out by 6 feet and you all wear masks except for when you're tasting. They brought out 7 barrels. We picked 1 for our group and 1 for Ed Ledger in Ledger's Liquors in Oakland. And that's when you pick a barrel, it has to go through the right process. So Ed was kind enough to bring our barrel through his store after we picked it. And then we, as part of the process, we also picked a barrel for him. So we were able to pick 2 barrels. Very, very classy place, Four Roses. For anybody that's been there, they know this, but for those that are not familiar.
Had you been there before? Had you been there before?
Had I been there?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I went there 3 years ago and made kind of acquaintance / friends with Brent Elliott, the distiller, the master distiller. And that's the only reason I kind of got in now. I should have specified. And we ended up picking this barrel. Now the process takes a long time. You have a lot of time to think after you make the pick. You have months. I was thinking about what I was going to do before the pick. So at the end of July is when we actually made the pick at Four Roses. For the couple months leading up to that, I wanted to figure out my idea, but I didn't know how torturous it was actually going to be, because then you have to wait a few months after you make the pick at Four Roses to get the barrels, because they have to ship them all out. I don't know if you need this level of detail, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. So
I had a lot. How your wife let you go to Kentucky during a pandemic?
Great question. So I'm divorced. So that's the first step.
That's
how.
That's a coincidentally.
For all of the married men listening, if you want to know how to accomplish these things, I'm just kidding. Stay married. It's beautiful. It's not for everybody, but I'm happy for you if you're listening and you're married.
The truth of the matter is, if
This
you wouldn't have
podcast
been
brought to
allowed
you.
to go.
This podcast brought to you by Lionel Hutz, divorce attorney. Call Lionel Hutz at 55KL955.
Yeah,
Totally.
yeah, totally.
So I had a lot of time to think about the theme of this bottle, and one of the things that I like to do always is like raise money for charities, and specifically St. Jude's. So the idea around this was like, it's like a pretty cool bottle. I showed this to you guys earlier. It's all themed with Fight Club, and there's a ton of Easter eggs in it. Fight Club is like one of my favorite movies, if not my favorite movie growing up. So I put a ton of stuff and thought and time and effort into this. And I don't do a bunch of picks. So, I wanted to give it 100%. So I spent many, many hours, many, many days like figuring all of this out. Anyway.
Why Fight Club? It's a great movie.
It's a great movie. It holds up. It makes sense now when you think about capitalism and the effects that capitalism has on certain parts of our society. Not all of them. Capitalism is okay, Jeremy. It's okay. I believe in it too.
Capitalism can be destructive, Jeremy. Can it not?
Not for me.
You got to compartmentalize.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no worries. It holds up now. It's a great movie, great acting, decent book. So I've heard. And you could do a lot of things with it, right? Like, there's a ton of stuff that you can do to make the bottle look cool. Like, it's definitely, a lot of people call bottles that have themes like really tatery, so to speak. It's like a derogatory term for, in the bourbon world, of like something that's like over the top, or like sort of like a jump the shark type of thing. But I was like, I do a pick every 3 years. I'm just going to give it my all. Anyway, excuse me, back to the original point. I'm doing this partially just because I love bourbon. I'm in a group that I'm going to distribute these bottles to, but the first 2 bottles that are going to be available are going to go to auction on like one of the largest bourbon groups nationally. We can leave out the name and all that stuff, but 2 of them will be available. So my hope is that like through doing this, we can raise some money, and whoever wins the auction can donate directly to St. Jude's. So that's the idea around the first portion of this, is just to raise some money for like kids with cancer and their families, so that they don't have to like suffer. And it's something that after having a kid, you start thinking a lot more about the fragility of life, especially when it comes to like children and how innocent they are. And like, I just love the idea of like trying to help. If I'm doing something that I love and I'm having fun doing it, why not, give back to a good cause?
Yeah. One of the coolest parts about, if you get like deep enough into the whole bourbon hobby, there's so many opportunities to give back to either local communities or national stuff like St. Jude's, that at least personally, I never expected when I was like, hey, I like how this tastes. I need 500 bottles of this. So that's always, and we talked about this a little bit with Brett Atlas a couple of weeks ago, but that's really cool. St. Jude's is an awesome place. That's fantastic. So you said there's a specific group that this is being distributed into? Yeah.
So I'm part of underground black market that's super secret. No, it's like, everybody basically is like on Facebook. So yeah, I'm part of a group, and I'm an admin of a group of, it was like 200 people. Now it's like 400, but it's people that like, I don't know, personally. But all of the people in the group seem to have a common thread to them, which is like, they want to do good things. So we did a St. Jude's charity auction where people would donate bottles and money at the beginning of the year. We try not to overwhelm them, but we did one first quarter, and that was for St. Jude's, and we raised, I think, something like $5,000 or $6,000.
Wow.
Between like 200 people, which is cool.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And then we did another one for cystic fibrosis, where we raised about $5,000, and then a couple others. So it's a young group, but the people seem to be on the same page when it comes to giving back while they're enjoying something that they like.
So
Great.
okay, so you picked the barrel. So you have how many bottles of this Fight Club bottle?
It's going to be like 136, I think.
But you're auctioning off 2 bottles?
2 bottles. So it's going to be limited to like 1 bottle per person. Um, so if you want to flip it, you can, but that's your only bottle. Is kind of how it goes. So it's going to be limit per one per person. So I'm doing 2 because I want people to have an opportunity to do whatever they want with their bottles and have like a backup based on whatever they want to do. Right.
Right.
I hope that people drink this. We picked this barrel specifically because it was ridiculously good. This was like a barrel that they rolled in, and each one of us had like an insane amount of char in our glass. And I was like, does everybody else have a bunch of barrel char in their glass on number 7? And everybody said the same thing, which was yes. And it just so happened to be like the best tasting. I don't know if it had anything to do with it. Jeremy called me aficionado earlier. I don't think that's the case. I just want to be clear about that. I have no idea if the char made any difference, but it was spectacular. So that's the one we picked. And it also happened to be one of the more rare recipes that they do. Four Roses does a bunch of different recipes and has it in a bunch of different warehouses, and all of them have a different complexity and different characteristics to them. This one's called an OBSO, which is a bit more rare. So not only is it like what I think, hopefully, and other people think is a cool theme for a good cause as well, to begin with, and then they'll go out to the rest of the group, but also it's a nice recipe. It's really delicious.
So, and just sort of some basic education. Four Roses, one of the cool things about them is they have 10 proprietary yeast strains, or 10 proprietary, essentially, recipes for their bourbon. So if you go buy Four Roses small batch or something like that, or any other non-single barrel offerings, it's a combination of some amount of those 10. One of them's all 10, one of them's just 6 of them, one of them's 4 of them. But when you go and choose a single barrel at Four Roses, there's 10 different recipes that you may be picking among. Now, it's very unusual that you get to choose between all 10. I think they'll do that like once a year for certain groups, but getting 7 barrels. Did y'all have any duplicate recipes that day?
No, we didn't.
So you're trying, yeah. So you're trying 7 different recipes, and really Four Roses does, I think, with the possible exception of Wild Turkey, if Eddie's there that day, they do the best job of anybody on the barrel picking experience. I've been lucky to do it 2 or 3 times myself. And so my next question is somewhat selfish, as I will possibly be back there in a couple months picking another barrel. So Julian, you did this three years ago.
Yeah.
And then where COVID-19 was famously not a part of our lives 3 years ago. And then you did it again when COVID was a part of our lives. Did you notice a dramatic difference in the experience?
I did. Having less people there made it less confusing. Everybody kind of does a little bit of banter every time they're tasting something, and will chime in on what their experience is with a specific whiskey that they're tasting at that time. And everyone's kind of on different pages. You have to, unless you're super well structured, and even this past time that we went with only 4 people, I had a specific thing in mind, and then it just went crazy, and like nobody listened to the rules, and I didn't care either because I didn't want to listen to the rules. So everyone's trying different things at different times. Everyone has their own system, in the way that they're tasting. So the biggest difference was the table talk was lessened a lot and more concise. And not everyone was talking over each other. There was less people in the room. And then Brent Elliott, who was also there, was also chiming in and tasting, and we were just ranking them. The first time I went, it was just like, I think like 12, 13 people. And it was just a lot. It was just too much. I had a great time during that pick, but when it really came down to picking a specific barrel that 4 people that know bourbon can agree on, that's a lot easier. And it makes it that you don't think that you made any mistakes, right? When I left the first tasting, I was like, wow, I really like this one barrel and nobody else liked it. And it made me kind of sad. That was not the case this time. So it was a bit more concise this time, I'd say. And of course, with the COVID stuff and wearing masks and all of that, and like the new precautions and rules around, getting too close and doing all of those things, that was a change, and it's hard to get used to, but I think that, it's important, and I think they did a great job.
Cool. So you're currently in my least favorite part of the barrel selection process, where you've picked your whiskey and you're in that period of time between having picked it and when bottles actually coming in. So I don't know if this is your experience, but for me, I'm always nervous that whole time. Like, well, what if I really liked it that day and then it comes bottled and I don't feel the same way about it? I always say every bourbon tastes better when you're tasting it in Louisville or Kentucky. Sometimes you get it back and you're not quite as impressed in your living room as you were in the Rick House. Are you nervous about it, or how do you feel about that? I want to know.
Well, now I am.
Is it just me that feels this way? I can't possibly be just.
I'm like, I wasn't, but now I'm really nervous. Thank you for adding another level of stress in my life. That's cool. No, I don't think so. We had 4 people there. I mean, you never know what's going to happen during the bottling process.
Well, and I know the guys you were picking with. You can't have better people there other than Bradford to pick a barrel. So I would feel incredibly confident if I was in your shoes, but I always just feel a little nervous about that.
Yeah, I think to your earlier question, like the change in having less people there. And a smaller sample size in terms of what's on your palate, how's the finish, how's the nose, and people giving their opinions. I'm not nervous. Like, we picked 2 really good barrels. The only thing I'm nervous about is that Ed Ledger's pick is better than mine. Honestly, again, Ed Ledger is the liquor store that this is the spirit store that this is going through. So the one that I picked for him was these 2 were very close. That's what I'm most nervous about. Not as much it coming back and not enjoying it as much.
So tell me also about the experience picking a barrel with the master distiller of Four Roses. What was that like? Are they giving you input, or what's happening when they're there with you?
This was one of the coolest things, actually, is that we, on the whiteboard, they set up a whiteboard in the tasting room so that you can make notes if you'd like. So we put our names on it and then put 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we ranked which one we liked based on, barrel. So there's 7 barrels. So we ranked all of them. And the ones that got the most check marks, the ones that we said, do your top 3. So, and the ones that got the most check marks got into the final stages, right? And then we discussed those 3 and retasted them. So he was one of he was tasting with us, Brent Elliott, and he was writing his scores on the whiteboard, and his top 3 and my top 3 were the same, which I don't know what that means.
Are you copying off of him?
I didn't, Julian, I didn't used to call you an aficionado. This is a new thing, and it's because of that.
Perfect. So yeah, I guess I'm an expert. I miss my calling of being a master distiller, but yeah, he chimed in. It was really great having him there. He doesn't join every pick. It's if he's available, it's if he is requested. I definitely asked him to be there 2 or 3 times leading up to it, probably in sort of an annoying way, but if you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
That's right.
Wayne Gretzky, so
Michael Scott,
Wayne Gretzky.
It's a quote by Wayne Gretzky recited by Michael Scott.
That's right.
So he came and it was a pleasure having him there. And he was great. He provided his input. We were all super confused, honestly. I'll tell you, nobody knew like we just knew that they were all so good. I think it's just because we were so excited to be there and to like this whole COVID thing going on and like finally getting together with some people that you like and appreciate and that like the same things as you. It feels good.
And Bradford was there too.
And Bradford, well, that was everything, but Bradford's great. And you know, it was just nice to be in Kentucky again and to that the hospitality of Kentucky is great. And Brent Elliott is top of the class there. So it was really good picking with him.
What's your favorite quote from Fight Club?
Oh my God. Whew. You know, when I was naming this bottle, I had so many names picked out based on quotes from the movie that I actually like wrote all of them down.
So you've pretty much committed everyone to memory.
Yeah. I think the probably the masturbation quote. Self-improvement is masturbation. Self-destruction. Sorry, I'm like messing it up now because you put me on the spot. But I know it, and it's self-improvement is man, killing me, man. But that's my favorite. You know what I'm talking about.
My favorite.
Maybe self-improvement isn't the answer. Maybe self-destruction is the answer.
Yeah.
That's a quote about masturbation.
Yes, you just felt like mentioning it.
Sorry. Wow. Now I'm confusing different quotes. And I'm typing in masturbation on my work computer.
They're gonna love that.
Yeah, they're gonna absolutely love this.
So how did?
Well, as you see, you don't. If you want to masturbate on your computer, you don't Google masturbation. You know, like that would be a stupid thing to Google.
Well, what if you don't know how to do it?
I guess Google.
I'm sure there's a YouTube video for that. Anyway,
so it's self-improvement, masturbation, now self-destruction, and it's on the bus, right? Like they're like looking at the sign. I think they're looking at like a Tommy Hilfiger or Calvin Klein sign, and it's like, is that what the male body is supposed to look like? And then he's like, self-improvement is masturbation, now self-destruction. So I was going to call this bottle self-destruction, but I ended up calling it something beautiful after he beats the shit out of Jared Leto in the basement. I also love the scene where Lou from Lou's Bar or Lou's Tavern.
You see the sign out front? It says Lou's Bar. I'm fucking Lou.
Fucking Lou.
Who the fuck are you?
Yeah, so he's like, and he beats the shit out of him. He's just like laughing the whole time. That's probably my favorite scene in the movie. He's like, we really like it here. And he's like bleeding all over him. Tell us you'll let us stay, Lou. Give me your word, Lou. Love that.
So tell me, not to take a hard right turn, but
no, it's okay.
No, Jeremy. What's your favorite quote from Fight Club?
I don't have one.
You like them all?
Yeah, I recite the whole script. I've memorized it all. So I'm curious.
Without pain, without sacrifice, we would have nothing. But
that's my favorite line.
That one very much characterizes you.
It speaks to me.
It's a very deep movie. There's a lot of great quotes from it. It's one of my favorite movies for sure.
But wait, sorry, Jeremy. I love you. I have to interrupt you though, because I want to hear what Ari's favorite line is from the movie.
You know, it's funny because now I want to watch the movie again because it's been years since I've seen it. But I mean,
that was another reason why I did this. I just wanted people to revisit that movie. It's so damn good.
You want to make an omelet, you got to break some eggs. That's a good one. And then the other one is, I mean, it's only after we've lost everything that we're free to do anything.
Love that one.
Yeah.
I like the one that says, what was it? The things you own end up owning you.
Yeah.
You're trying to buy things with money you don't have to impress people that you don't like. What's the rest of that one? You're trying to buy things you don't need to impress people you don't like. Shit.
Something like that.
We went down a rabbit hole here. Jeremy, please continue. I'm sorry.
So this is now a Fight Club podcast.
Yes.
We specifically specialize in starting quotes and not remembering how to finish them here on the show. And I hate to break away from that.
Don't worry, I'll come up with a quote at some point.
Oh, I'm sure you will.
Masturbation now.
Again. But so
we buy
Julian,
things we don't need with money we don't have
Dave?
to impress people we don't like.
There it is. Finally, I had it just in two separate
Yeah.
quotes.
All right, go ahead, Jeremy. You were saying something about
Are we, are we good, everybody? Any other parts of Fight Club that we'd like to recite?
There's so many though. Don't do that.
So, okay. So we don't just decide we like bourbon and then the next week write Brent Elliott and get a barrel pick done. How did you get into this?
How did I get the barrel pick done?
No, how did you just get into bourbon in the first place?
Gotcha. Okay. My first kind of experience with bourbon and just whiskey in general was when I lived in New York. My buddy, who had pretty deep pockets and like was working at a hedge fund, who I became friends with, him and his wife, and me and my then wife, we, he, like, I'd go over to his house, like not really knowing anything about whiskey, and he had like Yamazaki 18 and Pappy 23 and Pappy 20, and I'm like, he's like, yo, this stuff's really good. Meanwhile, this guy like is not on the secondary market. He's not on social media. Like, he just likes really good whiskey and like knows what he likes
and has disposable income to go buy at retail.
Well, back then you could find,
Yeah.
Yamazaki 18 for like 180, $200. I mean, that wasn't that long ago. So
It's crazy.
Maybe it was that long ago and I'm just that old. I don't know, but like,
Ding, 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 ding.
I'm like coming to realizations right now. So, he, like, I would taste whiskey with him and he was obviously tasting really good stuff and I really liked it. Right. Then I moved from New York to San Francisco, not being in the secondary market or anything like that. And I worked with a guy named Dave. You may know him as, Dave. No, I worked with this guy and he was like, oh, you like whiskey, I see. Because he saw me order like a Yamazaki 18 at a bar at a happy hour. And he's like, you should go on these, you should be a part of these bourbon groups. And I'm like, he's like on Facebook. And I'm like, oh, okay, how do I do that? And he's like, before I let you in, this is actually potentially going to change everything for you in terms of like your money spending and like becoming addicted to certain things that like are expensive and wanting things that sometimes you can't have. And I was like, I'm okay with that. Like, let's just do it. Just tell me what you're talking about. So he did. He put me in some of these groups, and he was right. I started spending money that I didn't have to impress people that I didn't like. But then I got really into it, honestly, and started like tasting whiskeys to understand the differences between the types of whiskeys, like Japanese, Irish, Scotch, bourbon, rye,
Canadian.
Sorry,
Canadian whiskey.
Canadian, of course. And then it just took off from there, and I started getting involved in groups and stuff like that. So through all of that and meeting people and visiting liquor stores looking for some hard to find stuff and making friends that way, you kind of start getting into this new world that you didn't know about that has all of these different facets to it that you have to navigate and try to understand, and you try to appear like what you're talking about most of the time, but sometimes you actually do know what you're talking about. So that's kind of how I got into it.
It's going great so far.
Yeah, divorced.
Hey, you know what? There's plenty of people who would say single and traveling to Kentucky for barrel picks. That's not a bad way to be.
Absolutely.
And for the record, I wouldn't say that.
And also for the record,
but some people would say that.
That's good. And certainly, so, I mean, look, it certainly seems, Jeremy, like when we talk about sort of the genesis of most people's who we have on of their love of bourbon, to me, it kind of goes back to with everybody. It's like this endless chase, like that's the allure of bourbon. It's just like this chase for
I sometimes think about I sometimes think about was I better off when I just knew that I liked Weller 12 and occasionally I saw it at the liquor store and I bought it and I drank it and I liked it. My wife would say yes, I was better off then. But my story is not that different from Julian.
Right.
One of my friend that I went to college with, Tori, won our fantasy football league, and after I sent him the money, he sent me a picture with Pappy Van Winkle in a glass, and I said, "How the heck did you get that?" And now here I am, all these years later, hosting a podcast about bourbon. I skipped some steps in there, but that's basically what happened. So, in addition to being a bourbon aficionado, Julian is also a Pittsburgh sports aficionado. How are you feeling about the Steelers so far this year?
I don't know, man. I don't like to speak too early. Usually I'm thoroughly disappointed by this point in time, but this year I'm cautiously optimistic /
Well, and look, say what you will about Mike Tomlin. He figured out a way to not lose in week 4.
That's true. All he had to do was inject COVID into people.
Infect your opponent with coronavirus, and you will not lose to them.
Yeah, we've seen him step on the, off the sidelines to block a player from returning a kick. Who's to say he wouldn't inject purposefully COVID into people to not play in week 4?
He didn't lose, did he?
He did not lose.
So you feel pretty good about him this year, though?
Actually, yeah, kind of. I do. And that's weird for me to say.
I'm sure that's not going to crush you at any point.
No, I'll be fine.
Optimism in sports is great.
Yeah, I mean, who does that? So, I guess I've never been a big fan of Mike Tomlin. I don't think that the fact that they're 3-0 this season in particular, with no home field advantage of any kind, and things being just crazy different, no preseason, I've seen him go 3-0 in the preseason before. Not saying this is the preseason or that it should be compared, but early on, there's a lot of promise, I guess is the point I'm trying to make. And then once the season starts, it's kind of downhill, at least over the last few years.
They have a great defense.
What's that?
They have a great defense.
Their defense is spectacular.
And so it's I feel like for a long time they were kind of built like they were breaking down that old, really good defense that won Super Bowls, and it was getting old, and it was so they didn't draft exceedingly well, and they had certain guys at defense, but it's and then it was a lot of it was on Ben for a long period of time, and it was they just didn't have anything beyond that. And now it's they've built a pretty good team around him, and he's old, obviously, but it's all they need him to do is be able to play and complete a few passes, but their defense is so good. They have really good weapons. They've got. Go ahead, sorry.
No. I'm sorry. I interrupted you, sir.
No. There's reason for optimism this year. There's reason for optimism this year, and the AFC is, I wouldn't say it's wide open, but there's less teams at the top that are great.
And Tom Brady doesn't play in the AFC anymore. That'll help.
Ravens and the Chiefs. That's it.
Yeah. Well, the Ravens. What do you mean, Ravens and the Chiefs? That's it. They're unbelievably good. Watching them it's the most impressive thing I've ever seen. Can they be beat? Yeah, 100%. I think Lamar's more susceptible to losses than Patrick Mahomes. When I watch Patrick Mahomes play, it's this guy is a surgeon.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. He knows what he's doing seconds before everybody else knows on the defensive side. Usually it's a split second, but this guy plays like he's playing chess and everybody else is playing checkers.
Yeah, when you have a super high-end quarterback like Mahomes or Lamar or Dak Prescott. It really makes the football watching experience a lot better as a fan.
Yeah. I mean, they're scary to play against. And to your point, Ari, about Ben, I don't agree with that. I think they need Ben to – I don't think he's a game manager. I think that
you're right. I probably positioned it wrong. I just mean it was for a long time there when their defense broke down, it was just all on him, and it's not all on him anymore. That's I guess what I meant.
Yeah, but yes, 100% I agree with that. The later stages of the Troy Polamalu era.
Right. That's what I mean. When that defense started to break down. And they kept getting rid of receivers. They never, it was every year they're shuffling through receivers and they're not signing anybody long term, which ended up being good decisions on Mike Wallace and many of these guys.
Yeah.
But it just seems like there's way more around him that he doesn't need to do everything
Wait a minute.
like he used to have to do.
Wait a minute.
Here we go.
I'm a Cowboys fan. Do you mean to tell me that you don't have to give these players massive extensions when they come up for them? I thought that was part of the rules.
All the players.
I thought everyone gets a multi-million-dollar extension. I thought that's how this works.
Steelers don't.
Do you mean to tell me that there are teams that don't do that?
Dude, that is, you know, you can say it that way sarcastically, but it also does suck to be a fan of a team that won't pay people that are like, that deserve to be paid. Now, when they ask for money earlier than they should, because they're not up for an extension or they're not up for negotiations, the Steelers do things different. They don't negotiate with players during a certain period of time during the year, right? They only negotiate at a specific time. That's the difference between the Steelers and a lot of organizations that give in to their players. The Steelers don't give in, but then you end up losing players like, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing, Antonio Brown, okay? Who knows if he could have turned it around? I mean, I do. He wouldn't have. But you talk about like Le'Veon Bell. Like this guy deserved to get paid.
Yeah, but all the guys you're about to name are all good moves by the Steelers.
I think that holding on to Le'Veon would have been a good move because he wasn't like a cancer in the locker room.
Right.
Like he did deserve that money. You know, with that offensive line and the way that he ran the ball for the Steelers he's been terrible ever since, which is a shame because I actually wanted him to do well, even though he moved on from the Steelers.
Well, he's had health issues. So.
Yeah, but that's because of his offensive line. The Steelers' offensive line and him worked so well together. That's why I was sad to see him go. So to your point, Jeremy, about like, oh, you're not supposed to give these people money. I wish sometimes they would give somebody that deserved money the money, and then other times make the decisions of not doing it. So
also the Cowboys passed up TJ Watt for Taco Charlton.
That was apropos of nothing other than you wanted to say it.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
It's just such a horrible mistake. And that's one of those that, like, even at the time, it was like, what are you doing? Like, that's one of those in real time you could tell that they were drafting the wrong player, which rarely happens.
As someone who eats Mexican food every Sunday as they watch the football game, if you're drafting somebody that you need to like get after something and they're named Taco, there's your hint. It's not happening.
He also spent like, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of dollars on a diamond encrusted taco chain. Which,
well, I don't mind that.
I just don't know what the resale value is of a taco. I mean, I know you can, you can mine the diamonds from it.
I don't know. I'll sell a couple bottles of whiskey. I'd buy the taco chain. That sounds great. Wear the taco chain as I eat my tacos and watch football. That sounds awesome.
So, Julian, I would say at this point in time, you could tell people listening where they could register to auction for these bottles, but you're not doing that. So I don't really know what to have you promote here other than you.
It's not really as much a promotion as it is just like,
give to St. Jude's.
Just like,
give $20 to St. Jude's. Do that.
Of course, it's like, hey, if you have an extra $20 that you're spending on baseball cards or bourbon or shoes,
cards.
Yeah, I mean, I just recently got into like football and cards, and it's a terrible experience. I don't want to tell you the amount of stuff that I waste my money on. Again, another reason why divorce is so important. So, all joking aside, love my ex-wife, great person. I don't know why I keep bringing up divorce. So that line at the end was also brought to you by Lionel Hutt's divorce attorney,
as required in the decree. Yeah. Julian must say that.
It's true. I have to say it at least 3 times. I'm like, it's like the meow from Super Troopers. You know, I know one more. It's going to be tough. So first of all, yeah, if you have extra cash that you're going to waste on things that don't matter, may as well give it to a good cause. Give it to a cause that you believe in, or that you've heard about, that you've been meaning to contribute to. I do St. Jude's because I can't imagine how hard it would be as a parent to go through what those parents are going through. And 100% of the donations for St. Jude's go directly to the families who are going through what must be the most excruciating experiences of their lives. So the auction is going to be on BSM. For anybody that's in the bourbon world, you know what BSM is. This will be done at the end of the month. And I'm really hoping that, whoever ends up winning this auction will have donated a significant amount of money towards a really great cause. And regardless of how much it is, I think it's just important that it's something, and that these families can feel the effects of people with, a common interest in, them not having to go through the most difficult times of their life alone. And so that's kind of what's going to happen with that.
Thank you, Julie. Appreciate it.
Yeah. And at the end of the month, find your way to BSM. If you know what that is, I dare you to try to outbid me. Aside from it's going to be a great thing to do for St. Jude's, in all seriousness, I give Julian tons of crap, and I'm going to keep giving him tons of crap. But he and the guys that he lined up to do this pick are some of the people that I trust most in the world about knowing what good whiskey is. So I am positive this is going to be a really good bottle, and empty out the pockets for St. Jude's.
Can I mention one thing? The people that were on the pick: Brandon Bradford, Lauren Simpson, David Burke. Really want to give a shout out to those guys. Really appreciate the work that they put in and the time that they put in. And of course, Brent Elliott and all of Four Roses, and the two of you, thanks for having me. I don't know if we're ending the show right now because I've never been on a podcast, but
yes,
it seems like we're it seems like we're petering out. Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
definitely.
I thought we were going to talk about Franco Harris and the Immaculate Reception, but that's for another day. But yeah, thanks to those guys, and please, as Jeremy said, if you're familiar with BSM, at the end of the month, look out for a post, and let's raise some money for a good cause.
Awesome.